Between 2018 to 2021, Dead by Daylight was a game that held my attention. I remember watching videos of its beta long ago before buying and playing it for myself. During these 4 years, my life was more or less surrounded by DBD. I would watch players better than me to hone my skills. I was proud when I hit rank 1 as both killer and survivor. I met many a friend or had bonds strengthened over swiffing or KYFing with someone. And my first stream on Twitch was of this game. I remember hoping that I would be the Wraith player, like Odstarva is the Trapper, or Archdruid Dre was the Doctor. Yet, I decided that I would never play Dead by Daylight again. Why is that? Before we begin, I want to mention that I was primarily a killer player. My favorites were the Wraith, Blight, Plague, and Doctor. I started to phase out of DBD around the release of Nemesis, and the last time that I launched it was on September 13th. Outside of MMR, I was happy with most of the recent patches. Sadly, both MMR and the Anna T dealings and behavior engaged in around the Hellraiser chapter were the final nails in the coffin for me. I'll touch more on precisely why later. Still, they resulted from behavior's long track record of mishandling the game and their out-of-touch communication. My issue with Dead by Daylight were the developer's decisions to massively change its internal systems and meta behind everybody's backs, or despite critique from a portion of its players. I don't want to go over every mistake that Behavior Interactive has made over the years because I don't have all day, so I'll succinctly give examples that raise some concerns. These red flags started with a rework to Hex Ruin on January 6, 2020. I agree that Ruin needed to be changed because it was a win more perk for top tier killers. However, what bothered many players and I were not giving the killers who needed it some compensation. DBD has always been a mess, but most killers sucked about a year ago. I know that seems very silly, but characters like Leatherface and the Doctor were considered jokes until given sufficient overhauls. Many Survivor mains laughed at killer players for needing to learn how to play, but what happened was waiting for the inevitable buffs, or accepting that you're probably not going to get that 4K as Myers because he is outdated in Dead by Daylight's ever-fickle meta. When these buffs came, many survivors were unprepared for the shift in killer design. Fun to play, but unfun to play against became a common phrase for this very reason. The two opposing player factions collided as the game was given any crucial changes. Decisive Strike, turning specifically into an anti-tunneling perk. Freddy Krueger went from functionally unplayable to low risk and high reward overnight. Several map reworks have added dead zones that give survivors little to no means to outplay a semi-competent killer. Everything about Raccoon City Police Department and how it was in limbo for half a year due to several game-breaking bugs. And the list goes on. I am rapid firing many examples right now, and some have both supporters and detractors. Still, the point is that it all mounts up and segues nicely into one of the most controversial periods in the game's long life cycle. In the summer of 2020, there were adjustments to the Hillbilly and Leatherface. Instead of ranting about the former being nerfed, even though most players in both roles agreed that he was one of the best designed characters in the game, I want to talk about the aura changes. This was admittedly a short-lived phenomenon in the game's lifespan, but I think the fact that this went through at all says a lot about how Behavior does not consult with their players. Dead by Daylight has a public test build allowing PC gamers to try out features Behavior wants to implement. The changes to the two characters mentioned earlier were given a try, and regardless of whether the devs listened to what they found or not, and often Behavior didn't or missed the point, that's at least a bare minimum. Unfortunately, the changes to the auras that made their red color darker and harder to see sneaked their way onto live servers without going up on the PTP. This was a huge deal because many players have been asking for colorblind options since the game's early days. Instead, Behavior has not only ignored these complaints for years, but was now making things worse. That aside, this was objectively a bad change that interfered with gameplay due to objects clipping through the auras. It got to the point where Behavior developers were making jokes, which might confirm that the higher-ups don't even talk with their own employees, let alone listen to player feedback and bug reports. There's no wonder why it took Behavior several months to address survivors not making any noise when down, or the game stuttering when performing actions. Even after the auras were restored relatively quickly, the visually impaired still had to wait months later to finally twist behavior's arm enough. And all it took was one of the developers making a rude comment that he doesn't care about people being able to play the game or not. Yikes. Soon after, the company went into damage control mode and promised to address this issue adequately. Which, to their credit, they did. Eventually. The story on spinning is a long way to say that the team refuses to listen to legitimate and constructive complaints at best, and some would condescendingly insult paying and future customers. And since we're talking about basic accessibility features, it did not bode well for the game's direction. So, history repeated when they ignored even their sponsored content creators about how a skill-based matchmaking system is incompatible with how people play the game. Finally, I decided enough was enough when they only came clean about falling into the NFT trap months after having the community unwittingly buy a product that resulted from it that some would not support otherwise. I promptly uninstalled the game then and there. Dead by Daylight has been one of the biggest indie multiplayer titles since 2016. Regardless of your opinion on it, that will always be impressive. But I don't think Behavior ever handled their issues with a productive or professional demeanor. I believe they deserve most of the scathing criticism they receive for their tone-deaf balance philosophy and unwillingness to cooperate with loyal customers. Still, it would be unfair to deny the success that DVD has to this day. Even if Dead by Daylight finally gets a competition that it needs to really improve itself again, I don't care whether it's overthrown or not. And I hate how much I don't care anymore. While the game was challenging for someone with a more choleric temperament like me to keep coming back to, it shaped the kind of content creator I want to be. So even though my animosity toward it now soured my perspective, I want this to be a tribute. The friends I made, the streamers I connected with, the hype I had for the Silent Hills chapter, and coming into semi-finals for a tournament hosted by John Wolf that impressed over 1,000 concurrent viewers in the Wraith. There really was no experience like my time with Dead by Daylight, and try as I might, I can't take that away from it. It feels good to give closure on this chapter of my life, and moving on to bigger and better things. Let me know if you liked hearing me rant about this game, and agree or disagree with it. Depending on how this performs, I might consider making a follow-up Q&A video or elaborating more on other changes that I took issue with. If you would be interested in that, comment below and share this along. I don't intend for this to attack any person or to start a movement. As my first stream game, I want to give Dead by Daylight a proper send-off. I hope this is relatable for people who felt the same way, and even for those who don't. This started as practice for rating game reviews, something I'm very passionate about, so any feedback is appreciated. Although, I should mention, this is not a review, just straight out a critique. While you would have my gratitude if you subscribe to my YouTube channel or my stream archives, that's not where to find me. You can follow me at Mouse Noir on Twitter and my streams on Twitch if you're interested in variety, especially horror games. More links like my Discord will be in the description, no pressure though. Thank you for making it this far in the video, and thank you so much for watching.